Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Taylor Bloom, and I'm the CEO of Sport Techie. I'm pleased to welcome you to this Sport Techie Pro Day titled Reopening Sports Venues, and it's presented by Samsung. At Sport Techie, we always strive to be a source of idea sharing and disruption with our reporting and events for industry professionals to use to communicate and ultimately innovate. And that is especially true for this event today, as we are in the middle of a very challenging time for the sports and live events industry. So we are thrilled to present a speaker lineup that is packed to the brim with movers and shakers from every part of the venue operations space. And so it is our hope that the 1,200 plus attendees of this Pro Day find the event to be a helpful way to stay on top of some of the best practices and adaptations that venue operators are using to adjust to these new live event variables that have popped up in 2020. And so that brings me to our presenting partner, Samsung. I'm pleased to introduce Brett Unzicker, VP of Sales at Samsung. We're very happy to work with Brett and his team to put together this event because Samsung plays a key role in the fan experience for so many venues around the sports industry. So we have a number of insightful speakers from Samsung today, and we thank them for their participation in this Pro Day. Brett, do you have a couple comments?
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. On behalf of Samsung, really want to thank everybody for attending. As mentioned, my name is Brett Unzicker. I lead a team that is responsible for live events and entertainment here at Samsung, and just really feel honored to be here. I know I can speak for the other panelists that they feel excited as well. Taylor, many of us on this webinar have always looked to Sport Techie as kind of the thought leader. However, I think during these last 8 months, I can speak personally. I'm sure a lot of others have tuned into you guys even more during these disruptive, challenging times, as you mentioned. So thank you, and thank you to your team for putting this on and for having us.
Awesome. Well, appreciate that, Brett. Yeah, we're looking forward to today and hope everyone finds it to be really helpful during these times. So some really quick logistical notes, then we'll dive into our panel. Make sure, to all the attendees out there, make sure you utilize the networking tab, Expo tab, and the main networking lounge within the sessions tab. Each of the tabs on the left side of your screen are super helpful and worthy of your time to navigate. Visiting all these places regularly throughout breaks in the events will help ensure you get the most connections and information out of your attendance today. And so we also know it's tough to replicate in-person networking, but we really like this event platform because it allows for some great networking in a virtual environment. So be ready to show your face on screen to other attendees. I promise you it's a fun experience. You'll get a lot of great new connections out of today. And then make sure you plan your time wisely for the afternoon networking break we have, where there are live sessions from Samsung, Janum, and Fortress that are going to be pretty engaging as well. And then last logistical note, if you have any questions about the platform or just issues, visit the help booth within the Expo tab. So with all that being said, thank you very much to our speakers, our attendees. We really appreciate you joining us today. And let's dive into our first panel, which is the live experience and enduring fan favorite. So I'm pleased to be moderating this panel. We have Brett, whom you've met. We also have Josh Kritzler, partner and co-founder at Forefront, and Rich Tamayo, Director of Guest Experience for the Baltimore Ravens. Gentlemen, welcome. Really appreciate you taking some time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
I'd love to try to set the table. So, we have Ravens, Samsung, Forefront. Three of you work together in various ways. Josh, would you be so kind to give us a bit of a background on Forefront, yourself, how you've worked with the stadium here with Samsung, and then we'll kind of go from there around the panel.
Sure. Hello from my basement here in Chicago. And Taylor, thank you for having us. Sport Techie has definitely been a huge resource for Forefront for a while now. And to echo Brett's point, especially in the past few months, it's been an incredible resource, and it's created thought leadership, and we're very appreciative. So thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know, Josh Kritzler, one of the co-founders of Forefront, we were actually formed in 2007. We've gone through a number of iterations, but we really have 4 core competencies. We work with teams and leagues in every major sport, both domestically and internationally. Those core competencies are sponsorship sales, innovation, which also is our sort of strategic consulting arm, analytics and valuation, and digital media. And then in the past 18 months, we hired industry veteran who Brett has worked with in a former life, Keith Hannick, to build out our technologies division as part of our ecosystem that we offer to clients. And really through that is how we formed a strategic partnership with Samsung Prism View to offer sort of these hybrid solutions in these very different and evolving times in the sports and entertainment industry.
Thank you, Josh. And Rich, over to you.
Hey, from Baltimore with a new picture I hung up on the wall just for this.
Well done.
It looks good, doesn't it? So, we're here. We're in that midst of bringing fans back to the stadium, and it's been a lot of work for the last 8 months to make sure that happens. With our relationship with Samsung, with technologies, as kind of Josh talked about, the specifically the beautiful new Ravens visions that we've had, and the corner boards and the new LED ribbon boards are really, they're great before COVID year. I mean, they were awesome. Our fans have given nothing but great feedback about them. But actually, the way we're utilizing that to push communications to fans while they're in house is something that kind of we'll go into a little bit as we move through the session.
Thank you. And Brett, how have you been working with Forefront and Ravens from a Samsung perspective?
Yeah, I think, again, thanks for having me. My team is responsible for live events and entertainment at Samsung. And obviously, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but that hasn't really been going on the past 8 months. So I think it was actually Josh who said recently on the call that there's been, 6 years worth of innovation done in the last 6 months. And I would like to think that Samsung's been a core part of that. So whether it's been around solutions to help give fans peace of mind that they can come back to live events safely with the coronavirus, temperature checks through thermal devices and things like that, or whether it's through revenue retention strategies with Forefront and some of the valuations and flexible solutions Josh talked about. We've really tried to figure out ways to get fans back to live events, back to business, and how to generate revenue long term through our technologies.
Brett, you're stealing all my lines early.
There's a royalty. I'll pay it later.
Well, I definitely want to get to that, accelerated innovation concept you just brought up, Brett. That's been a major theme with a lot of our reporting throughout this year. Rich, starting with you, I kind of want to talk about just the game day experience right now and talk about how that's changed, and then we can get into just the overall operations and preparing for that game day experience. But the reason I'm excited to have the three of you here is you each come from very different backgrounds to make what I think is a really well-rounded perspective for this panel. And Rich, how have your game days changed from last season to this year in having to adjust to all these new COVID variables? We'll start there and get into more partnerships you have.
First, I had to read a lot because there's a lot of things that came down from the NFL that we had to read through and make applicable to our stadium. I'd say that a fan coming in, what they will notice is that we have taken certain steps to keep them safe. Our game day experience has always been safe. It's always been great, always been, tops in the NFL. But right now it's really focusing on the cleaning aspect. It's focusing on the technology aspect. It's giving them the feeling of, okay, we're at a football game. COVID still exists. We understand that, but it actually some of the places actually improved in my opinion. Some of their experiences actually improved. And I'll take you through really quickly about what someone will experience right now coming to a game. First and foremost, all mobile tickets, something that we rolled out last year. Very happy that we did roll it out last year, and we're kind of sticking to that this season. So mobile tickets, so they have to access the stadium with their mobile device. When they get to the stadium, after going through the security screening, we have actual pedestal scanners. So it's like a self-service, right? So that is one of those things where, we no longer the days where you take a ticket for someone or you scan it yourself. That kind of gives the contactless environment that we've been trying to create. And then as they come in, you have your concessions in retail that everybody loves to enjoy, especially at a stadium, that we've gone, again, cashless. So those type of things, though we had to react and put it in place this season, I think that that's going to be, help us throughout the kind of as we move forward, seasons on end, when everything goes back to normal. And then you have all the other things that us, as the Ravens, but also working with the local government, state government, and also the NFL to put in place to say, okay, not only do you want you to see that you're safe, right? We want you to feel that you're safe. We want to put all the cleaning in process, but we also want you to know about everything. So you'll see signs everywhere if you come to the stadium, and you'll see it on not only on the digital devices we'll kind of go into a little bit later, but everywhere you look, a guest will see, say, oh, wear your mask, stay social distance. We have the dots on the floor like pretty much everyone else. So it's changed, but it's also very understandable in the change. And the first game we hosted with the fans with the Steelers, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive on thank you for doing this to keep us safe.
Mm-hmm. Rich, thank you. And Josh, 4Front obviously works with so many different teams as clients around the world. How have you guys tried to stay ahead of the curve to keep those teams informed about setting up experiences like Rich just outlined? Yeah,
it's a phrase I've been using quite a bit, but it's there are no answers, just updates. So I think the way we think about it, our teams have been thinking about it, is just a constant state of preparedness, right? Is the ability to be nimble and evolve and adapt to changing circumstances. So any plans that were made, 6 months out or 3 months out have the potential to change. The other side of that coin, and Brett stole my line earlier, but the amount of innovation that is happening is incredible. I think we've seen a lot of teams look to digital much more than they ever have, both from a digital media, like that second screen experience, and then also the blank canvas from the technology perspective is, I think it requires a lot more flexibility with somebody's broadcast partner. As we're looking for hybrid solutions that include additional technology within the stadiums, additional LED for camera visibility, one, working with that broadcast partner, and two, I think we've always thought about sort of technology is in LED and things like that as logo placements in the stadium. And how do you create much more of a game day experience using that TV visible technology that a fan would otherwise have in stadium, right? Some of the fun things, the kiss cams and the donut races and all of those things that typically only lived in venue. How do you create hybrid solutions for those that also exist in broadcast? And so I think sort of the combination of that with what people are trying to accomplish on a second screen in terms of the gamification and additional stats, there is no better time to sort of break down old paradigms and innovate than right now, frankly.
Yeah, that's absolutely a big trend we've been hearing in a lot of these conversations. And Brett, this conversation is entitled The Live Experience and Enduring Fan Favorite. We know the live experience isn't going anywhere. We're just having to adjust it right now. Samsung recently did a pretty robust fan survey. Can you talk to us about some of the what you were trying to find there, and then what the results actually ended up being with that survey?
Yeah, sure. I was actually just reading it right before this and making some notes. The team went out to really try to understand. We have our own hypotheses about whether or not people want to come back and what's important to them, but we really wanted to have some data behind it to make data-driven decisions and to advise our customers and our partners on what people were saying. So we did a survey with over 1,000 respondents. The criteria was they had to have attended at least one live events, concert, game, whatever that might be, in 2019. So we did the survey and it came back. And for me personally, what was really encouraging was I'd say one of the overarching themes was people crave live events. They want to come back. Some statistics around it: 74% of them said that we will come back within a year, large-scale live events. I thought that it was interesting when asked what they missed most about it. The number one and number two reasons: the number one was the people, and the number two was the excitement. This was people and excitement were above the game, the music, and the food. And I thought personally, that was kind of ironic in that how this virus transmits is often through people and excitement. That being said, what they also said was that they need to feel safe in the bathrooms and in their seats. Those were the two places that they wanted to have the most precautions. And in order to come back, at a bare minimum, the non-negotiables, 75% of people said that there needed to be strict sanitizing. 74% of people said that there needed to be reduced capacity and social distancing. And I actually had the opportunity to talk with some of the people that took the survey after they took it. And Rich, you just said something interesting to me, which tied to what I would call the voiceover from some of that, which is people said it's not enough to just do it. What I got from them was you need to tell us what you're doing, you need to show it to us, and you need to prove it and communicate it to us. So I think, Rich, that kind of goes with what you're saying about, you've got to tell, show, show people what you're doing. I mean, if you think about it, I think like when I go to, whether it's going to the grocery store, whether it's dropping my kids off at school, or whether it's going to church, all of these operations have changed. And to Rich's point, all the things you guys are doing are different. And you've got to communicate that to them to give them the peace of mind that they can come back safely.
One ad there, and it's sort of a concept that I've been mildly obsessed with the last couple of months, is this concept of normalcy bias. That we all have this innate thought that we are very quickly going to return to some level of normalcy or how things were. And I tell the story, my grandmother lived into her late 90s and was a child of the Depression. And to the day she died, you could not fit another piece of food in her icebox because she grew up in the Depression. And so it was sort of imprinted on her that like she was always going to be short of food. And so I would not underestimate sort of the changes that are taking place and the steps that Rich and other teams are implementing. I think the teams that are thinking about it the right way is not necessarily 3 to 6 months temporary changes, but sort of behavioral changes that will last well beyond, frankly, even when there are vaccines and whatever new normal looks like. But I think the teams that will be successful are not the teams that sort of are biding time until something gets back to whatever normal was, but are sort of planning and future planning that these are going to be the next, the new expectations for a period of time well beyond when there is a vaccine and people are sort of enjoying live events, which we all absolutely agree are, I'm having this conversation with you from my basement. So yeah, we miss live events.
Yeah, Josh, I would actually add if I could onto that. I couldn't agree with you more. I have often been telling organizations that, errors of inaction are worse than errors of action right now. And, what I mean by that is like decisions aren't easy. You've got to pull up and shoot and make a bet and iterate. And I think, the Ravens are a forward-thinking organization. Rich, you guys have done that. But yeah, to your point, I mean, we're all sitting in our basements doing a webinar as opposed to being at a conference. That to think that live events in sports haven't fundamentally changed for the future is a flawed position. I think you can't sit around and wait.
And I agree with both of you wholeheartedly. When you think of rolling new things out to guests, we are one of those facilities that have limited capacity. I think all facilities pretty much have limited capacity. When you're doing new technologies, you're trying to train a different behavior. Having a limited capacity actually helps because you can answer more questions or work out the kinks because the things that we're doing are not just for this season, like Josh mentioned. They're going to be for seasons moving forward. And we're keeping up with the times and going with the times as in, we had fans at the Steelers game, and we just recently made a decision that we aren't going to have fans for the Titans game. Not because anything changed on our protocol, but because the local government decided, hey, this is what would probably be, smart, and we went along with it. So that doesn't change that if we the next game have fans, we're still going to have these protocols and technologies in place. We just have a little bit more time now to look at it and say what worked, what didn't work, and luckily for us, a lot of it has been working. So I agree totally.
I love that. And that's a terrific segue into what I wanted to go into next. So we talked about the actual game day and how that's different, what fans are expecting on game day, but all the preparation leading up to it. Josh, I think you put it really well with your comment on normalcy bias, and that's certainly been something we've had our eye on, which is how teams are pulling up and shooting, Brett, to use your basketball metaphor, and not just trying to, dribble out the clock to try to complete that metaphor. It's really the teams that are being proactive. And Rich, from your team's perspective, you're the director of guest experience. How is your team, your organization adjusted just their communication flows within the organization to prepare that guest experience for when there are fans allowed, when there aren't? Because a lot of that is happening on the fly, I'd imagine, and you're now having to talk to government organizations that you never would have spoken to last year, for example. So I'm curious how you guys have implemented your kind of in-house communication strategies and how they've been different from the past, and what you think will kind of endure there going forward.
A big positive from this is much more communication, more meetings, more, believe it or not, more face-to-face, even though it's not in person, more face-to-face, more committees based on truly, when you have a committee called the Return to Work Committee, that's specifically, you're working on that topic, right? To how do we get people to return to work? And then that committee is also return to work and return, for guests at the stadium. So what we've done is basically put it out there that we are using those meetings and the feedback from the staff on how. Ask the question about your own staff. What would make you feel safe coming back to the stadium? And putting that out there and making sure that they are comfortable. So a lot more meetings. We've also, as the guest experience team, to keep the staff themselves informed, which I don't know if you knew this, but about 2,500 people work on a normal game day, right? It could be anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000, to keep them, kind of understanding with what's going on. Since April, we've been doing basically a video podcast of different subjects around keeping them kind of their guest service skills basically in check. And we've put that on our website, and only staff members can actually go look at it to keep everyone connected. So believe it or not, I felt after this off season, I felt more connected to staff knowing that we were doing all of those things than I did in previous off season. So that's something that we're going to continue. Just because this is, may end or we go back to some normalcy, we're going to continue pushing that information. So a lot of it is, believe it or not, just a lot more communication and a lot more face-to-face meetings. A lot of times we have our president, Dick Cass, who's amazing, and he, does a town hall with us, which is something that we would in person. We did town halls, but not as frequent as you can do them with technologies like Zoom or Teams. So that's one of those things that I think that it's actually improved.
It's really interesting. And Josh, from your forefront perspective, what are some of the elements that will endure going forward when the normalcy bias kind of becomes reality and we figure out where we're actually at with whether it's the vaccine or limited fans being allowed back, et cetera?
Yeah.
Say?
I think we've talked about a number of them, but what's also interesting is, to Rich's point, just about the internal communication. I think anybody who works on the team side, in some ways can relate to some of the silos that exist internally within a team structure, right? You have sort of your sponsorship group and your marketing group and your communications group, your game day group. And I think it's required everybody to sort of rethink those silos a little bit and start to collaborate in much more creative and direct ways, because that messaging, is required throughout, right? And so as teams think about revenue retention and sort of how do they revalue and repurpose assets, how do they communicate with their fans in a way that promotes sort of health and safety? And I think Rich said it very, very well, is, human beings in the absence of information go to weird places, right? And so I think the teams that are really communicative with their fans about what the plans are, or the ideas for plans, even though if they're not concrete, because nothing is concrete. And secondarily, the teams that are communicating internally with their own staffs about potential plans, we're seeing are thriving much more so than those who say, no, I don't have this answer 100%, so I'm not going to say anything. I think that creates real challenges internally. So I think some of the things that you're going to see indoor is much better collaboration between game day operations and marketing and sponsorship, and all of those silos internally that exist at a team, because everybody is sort of recognizing, how important it is to all row in that same direction upon whatever sort of the various return states are for each of the teams.
And Brett, thank you, Josh. Brett, kind of same question to you from a Samsung perspective. I mean, you're obviously working so closely with so many venues and teams to try to provide them with tech solutions, digital solutions that they're looking for. What are some adaptations that, maybe move quickly on this year that you think will be very important in years to come?
Yeah, I think that two things two trends, so to speak, that have emerged from this that I don't think will change are the communication to the fans, kind of what Rich talked about. We can't really communicate to them enough. And then the data from fans. This 6 years of innovation in 6 months, we're capturing more and more data from fans than we ever have before. And I don't mean that in a Big Brother sense, or nothing that's not HIPAA compliant or GDPR regulations and things like that, but just information on fan behavior, which long-term generates revenue. And that's something that I would actually say people need to be thinking about as you're looking at some of these CapEx investments related to bringing fans back. What do these investments do after the coronavirus is gone? What information are you getting from them? How do you leverage that? How do you take the contact tracing information you're using on somebody that has a fever, and how do you use that contact tracing information, in a year, 2 years from now, when this thing is long gone, to understand where they're going to buy merchandise, or where they're sitting, or what they're buying, how fast they get through the venue, where they stop and pause. Those are the two trends, I would say: communication to the fans and data on the fans.
The data. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead, Josh.
The data piece, Brett, is a great call out. It exists for the fans, and it also exists on the corporate side. We're seeing new sponsored categories emerge as part of this, and new revenue generation opportunities, and we're seeing some potentially retract as sort of industries, are net beneficiaries or not of sort of everything that's happening. And so the data on the fans, the data on their behaviors, what they're eating, what they're drinking, what they're buying, what they're doing, and sort of how that translates, the analytics data on who then those brands are that want to participate in sort of some of these returns, I think will create some really cool insights. And we're seeing that in the work we're doing right now. So it's an absolutely great call out on the data side.
I worked at Walt Disney World during the rollout of the Magic Bands and all that technology. And when you talk about the data, we look at it now from the Ravens, and this was before COVID, that if we're able to kind of have that RFID technology, find out trends of food and beverage, this is an opportunity for us to create some amazing and memorable experiences for people. We look at it as, if I know that John Smith, who's a PSL owner in section 237, always goes to the same stand, I might have a hot dog waiting for him. I might have it waiting myself with it. Here you go. I know you like the hot dog. I know you like it with relish, and that will blow them away. So that's the type of stuff that before COVID we were thinking of it, and now it's been escalated, and we will definitely take that and use it for future experiences.
Yeah, and Taylor, if I can build off Rich's comment there, I think that's so important, and it's this whole living room effect that I often talk with friends in the industry about. Meaning, the biggest competition to somebody coming to a venue has always been their living room. They know how short the line is to the bathroom. Maybe it's one kid, maybe it's two. They can get that cold beer, they can get the burger off the grill or the hot dog with relish, like Rich just talked about. But that competition is so much more stiff as we come back to venues. People are accustomed to the 4K, the HDR, the 5G, all of these things that they have at home. But if we have that data and that information, we can recreate those experiences that they expect at home in venue, to bring people back. I just think it's so critically important that people think about that.
And Brett, building on that, are you looking to recreate or surpass the experience at home? Because I completely get that, like, hey, look, here's the comforts of your home. We can offer that at the venue, but going forward, is there a pressure to even like surpass what you have at home? Because these are, these stadiums are big, grand palaces and host spectacles. Is that part of the mindset where you're saying, look, we have to check these boxes to compete with at home, but then go over the top and say, here's the best live fan experience we can give you. It blows away your couch.
Absolutely. I can't get into it in a public forum like this, but Samsung's doing some pretty interesting things across multiple divisions to come out with solutions that do that, to do things that are, whether it's predictive, like Rich talked about, or other things that are just, readily available that I know both Rich and Josh know about that in this 6 years of innovation in 6 months. We're coming out with to make sure that we understand why if you have floor seats but you're sitting up in the 300s, why you're doing that, and if you typically go left to get a hot dog but now you're going right to get a taco and you're stopping at a merchandise booth, why? Who is that profile? Those are the types of things we're trying to figure out so that we can surpass that experience in the living room.
Gentlemen, we only have a couple more minutes, and so with this pro day, we strive to obviously get people like yourself who are kind of at the forefront of the live fan experience speaking with us today, but also our audience is super knowledgeable. And so I have this question to kind of leave you guys with: what advice might you give to the 1,200 attendees today, just about this year, what we've learned, and what's to come next year and then the years to follow? Josh, you want to lead off for us on that question?
Yeah, I guess first of all, be adaptable, right? Paradigms are shifting, and so sort of the ability to be adaptable and pivot when necessary. But to Brett's point, inactivity is not an option. So iteration on that adaptability is part of it. And I'll leave you with one thing. When Brian Gaynor, who's our Vice President of Innovation, when we do work for teams and strategy for teams, we really have 4 mantras, and we had them pre-COVID, but they're no less relevant. In fact, in some ways, they're even more relevant. And I'll sort of, those will be my parting words. But when we work with teams on strategy, we talk to them about stand for something, take a risk, tell a story, and own a moment in time. And I think all of those things are equally, if not more relevant today than when we were preaching them pre-COVID.
Well said. Rich, same question to you.
It's tough to follow, so thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. I would say I'm going to try not to copy his words, and I'll say understand your audience, understand your guests, understand the folks who work with you. Do your best to make sure that you're taking all that information and you are making, whether it's COVID, whether it's not, making someone feel comfortable and have the top best guest experience in mind, or even staff experience in mind. I will say wholeheartedly, everything starts with us, with the staff experience. So have that in mind, and definitely be adaptable. I know I'm using Josh's word, but you have to be adaptable. We all have adapt every single day for the last 9 months or 10 months. So make sure you're adaptable and make sure that you are taking the feedback and the opinions of your team and actually using it to make change.
Brett, you want to add to that and close us out?
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar to what they already said and what I said earlier. I think errors of inaction are worse than errors of action. Decisions aren't easy. Act, make a decision, iterate, be flexible, be adaptable.
Well, great. Those are some good takeaways. And Brett, Rich, Josh, thank you so much for kicking us off on this Sport Techie Pro Day. Genuinely appreciate your time. It's certainly interesting times for venue operators, and hopefully this panel kicks us off for a good event that stimulates some good discussions and helps out venue operators out there. So thank you, gentlemen. And to our audience, this is our first 10-minute break. Click around on the tabs, go network for a bit, and then come back shortly for our next speaker. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.